So one of the most common questions I get when people are trying to overcome binge eating is two things. Those are the two main questions. Number one is, how can I not fear weight gain? How do I even gain weight? And number two is, when I try to eat the foods I love, how will I not trigger a full-on binge eating episode? If I try to eat a piece of chocolate, which I normally binge on, or peanut butter, how sure are you that I'm not going to trigger full-on binge eating episode, fall into guilt, start another diet, and start another binge eating episode, restart this cycle again? So in this video, I'm gonna give you 10 amazing tips on how to put measures in place, how to not trigger a binge eating episode, how to prevent binge eating episodes, and how to have a normal balanced eating pattern so you can become a normal eater. Because these are the 10 tips I implemented that I now use every single day, so I don't have any worries about binge eating. I implemented these tips maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I just lost track of time, but it ended my binge eating episode. It got me out of the cycle, and it prevents any binge eating episode. So starting off with number 10, we need to realize that binge eating is not a problem, it's just a symptom. And what do I mean by that? So when you see binge eating as a problem, you see yourself as broken, you need to fix yourself. But we need to see binge eating as a symptom, because binge eating is not something that 1 in a million people struggle with. It's one of the most common eating disorders in the world. It's extremely common, it's heavily underdiagnosed because many people binge eat in secret. And just like feeling hungry, then we start to eat. But if we feel extremely deprived, whether we undereat calories, or we're having no satisfaction with our meals, or we're feeling mentally low, emotionally vulnerable, then we might trigger binge eating episodes. So binge eating is part of our natural response to any form of deprivation, physically or psychologically. So we need to realize that it's a symptom, and we need to calm down these alarm bells. So are you having measures in place outside of food that could make you vulnerable to binge eating episodes, like stress, being emotionally low, feeling mentally drained, feeling burnt out? So those are a few of the things that could put you in place to be more likely to binge eat. So number 9, we need to realize that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So you can ignore at the moment all of these things about it's created by cereal companies, all of this propaganda stuff. Let's think about binge eating recovery. It is the most important meal of the day, because when I struggle with binge eating, then I would have a binge eating episode, I'd fall into guilt, then I'd promise to myself, okay, I'm gonna make up for all of the calories I've eaten right now this evening. I'm gonna skip breakfast, I'm gonna skip lunch or have a tiny lunch, and then continue that. I'm gonna undereat as much as possible, skip as many meals as possible to make up for the calories eaten. So what you're doing here is, when you're skipping breakfast the next day, you're promoting deprivation, you're promoting restriction. And when you're telling your body that there's restriction going on, then it's gonna sense like, oh, okay, there's no food, let's increase those hunger hormones, let's increase those cravings, let's contribute to adding more fuel to the fire to start a binge eating episode. So if you think about the binge restrict cycle, we jump onto a diet, we feel very deprived, and then you want to start a binge eating episode, and then you fall into guilt, and then you want to start a diet again. So it's restrict, binge, and you're in this never-ending cycle of trying to make up for the binge you had last night. So breakfast is gonna cut that cycle away. You had a binge eating episode in the evening, and then the next morning you have like a nice, comfortable, balanced breakfast. So you're cutting off this restriction, you're cutting off this cycle. So this takes me back to the intermittent fasting days. And if you've heard of intermittent fasting, it's essentially where you try to skip breakfast, then have a light lunch, and then have a normal dinner. People ask me, okay, with intermittent fasting, is it helpful to end binge eating episodes? The thing is, it's not, because if you're struggling with binge eating, your body is sensing deprivation, your body is on red alert, like, oh, okay, I don't know when my next meal is going to be. That's essentially what your body's thinking. And if you're skipping breakfast and having a tiny lunch and pushing your meals way down the line, then it's not going to really help you. You're just telling your body there's no food, so let's ramp up those hunger hormones. So I used to do intermittent fasting back then, either black coffee in the morning, maybe an apple for lunch. That really exploded my binge eating episodes. So cut the dieting for now and put breakfast as the number 1 priority after a binge eating episode. Stick to regular meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Make it consistent. Tell your body that there's food regularly available. So that takes me straight perfectly to number 8, to remember that balanced meals is also key. So you can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but if you're having breakfast, if you're having like a cupcake for breakfast, that's not really a balanced meal. If you're having toast and butter, that's technically not a balanced meal. To make a balanced meal, you need to have protein, fats, carbs, and fiber, and I talk about it much more in this video here on how to create balanced meals. But in a nutshell, make sure all of your meals has protein, fats, carbs, and fiber. So a balanced breakfast, let's say, if you put this into perspective after a binge eating episode last night, you have for breakfast toast, that's carbs, butter, fats, eggs, that's protein, and let's assume that the bread is brown bread, that's a bit of fiber, or maybe you can have a banana or a kiwi to add a bit of fiber. So that's a balanced meal. Another breakfast example could be protein yogurt, so that's protein, and a toast with butter. So that's essentially a balanced breakfast. I want you to think of like ideas for a balanced breakfast, and then maybe ideas for a balanced lunch. Maybe rather than like pot noodles, because that's not really balanced, it's just carbs and maybe some fat in it. Try to make sure that your meals has like chicken, rice, some veg, and some fats. Maybe have some olive oil with your chicken to make it much more juicy and delicious, or maybe some butter with your vegetables. The reason for this is to have balanced meals is when you're having protein, first of all, with your meals, it's gonna increase the satiation of the meal. It's gonna keep you full, it's gonna reduce cravings, you're gonna reduce hunger. Carbs will give you sustained energy throughout the day. Fats will improve or regulate your hormones, because fats are essential for your hormones, and fiber will also reduce your blood sugar rush, because when you have a sugar rush and a sugar crash, then our cravings are gonna go through the roof. And it's also important to note that having balanced meals also means keeping the foods you love. It's not balanced if you're eating only like most people call clean, nothing you enjoy. That's not really balanced. Balance means the balanced form of keeping your meals balanced in terms of the macros. So if you enjoy chocolates, then include chocolate into your diet. If you enjoy muffins, then include muffins into your diet. But make sure you make them balanced. Maybe pair it with protein. So if, for example, if you enjoy chocolate, I'll say for my example, I enjoy like chocolate bars. I'm gonna have chocolate bars, but I'm gonna add some Greek yogurt on the side, or maybe a protein yogurt on the side. That's gonna make it filling, but I'm still having the food in there, because there's this thing in science called the forbidden fruit effect. So in science, the forbidden fruit effect is essentially, if you try to restrict something, then you're gonna want more of it. And it's a very strange thing, but essentially that's the summary of binge eating, is trying to eliminate the forbidden fruit effect. So include the foods you love, include the foods that make it more balanced, and you're gonna skyrocket your way out of binge eating urges. So there's a saying by Brittany Burgunder, hold yourself back or heal yourself back together, you decide. So I completely understand that if you're feeling quite anxious about eating all of these foods, it's gonna make you increase your fear of weight gain, you're gonna be worried. But remember, you can either hold yourself back or heal yourself back together. So it's your choice. And getting out of binge eating, getting out of guilt, getting out of shame every night, not feeling food anxiety is gonna improve your health way, way more than anything other than the world. So I saw this post recently on Instagram, I can't remember where I found it from, that the fear of weight gain is causing your body way more harm than any weight gain can ever do for your health. Because if you're constantly fearing weight gain, you're in this chronic state of stress, and that's gonna affect your hormones. Your cortisol levels are gonna go through the roof. Fearing weight gain is gonna cause you to have a disordered relationship with food. You're gonna undereat. That's gonna lead to poor bone health, poor energy levels, and so many more. It's gonna wreck your mental health. So number 7 is to focus on habits, not your weight. So with all this talk of weight, so if it gives you some reassurance, I want you to weigh yourself every week. If your weight has shot up, then you're probably at your deprived weight, and now you've probably set at the baseline. The evidence shows that if you eat consistent regular meals, if you're in binge eating recovery, people actually don't gain a significant amount of weight. They only gain a tiny bit of weight, and then it stabilizes, because essentially, rather than having like skipping breakfast, skipping lunch, and having a binge eating episode, you're only splitting those calories throughout the day. So you're telling your body, okay, food is coming in regularly. Don't try to weigh yourself every day, because that's gonna wreck your mental health. Your mental health and your mood is gonna go all over the place if you're seeing your body, your weight go up and down, up and down, up and down, because our body fluctuates depending on the amount of glycogen in our body, in our muscles, in our liver, the amount of salt, the amount of stool in our body, amount of food in our stomach, and many more. Try to focus on habits. Try to become the best version of yourself. There's a book by James Clear, you probably heard or read it somewhere, called Atomic Habits. If you want to improve your habits and change your mindset, the thing you need to do is to change your identity. Form your identity to your ideal self. That's how you change your habits. Focus on identity change. So number 6 is to create an identity-based goal, and I touched on it a bit on the previous point. But to create an identity-based goal, the goal is to not achieve results at first. The goal is to become become the type of person who can achieve those things. And that's a quote straight from Atomic Habits. So what I want you to do to create an identity-based goal is to write in your journal or a piece of paper or a book 3 things you want to be. For me, it's to be the best boyfriend I can for my girlfriend, and to be really strong, and to be lifting X amount of weight. So what I want you to do is to write down on a piece of paper or a book or a journal or a diary, anywhere you can write on, or even type in your phone, your ideal self. So you can write, what I'd write is, how can I be the person who doesn't struggle with binge eating and enjoys life? And then write down 3 things below it, what you can do to get you to that point. Everything you're doing right now, there's this thing called the Odyssey plan in science, and then you literally have a fast forward button in life, like 1 year down the line or 3 years down the line. If you fast forward everything you're doing right now, would that get you to that goal, or would you still be at the same place? Hey guys, so when I just finished filming this video, I just realized like some bits were actually cut off and I couldn't find the bits, and the bits were actually points 5, 4, and 3. So I'm just gonna go through them really quickly. So point 5 is, don't call foods good and bad, because when you add morality to food, then you can start to self-internalize it. So for example, if you eat a food you call bad, even though we know it's not literally poison, self-internally, if we just eat a food that's bad, then we're gonna associate ourselves with bad, and we're going to spiral slowly into this pit of shame, guilt, embarrassment. I'm the worst person, I shouldn't have eaten this forbidden food. And the more you call a food bad, and the more you self-internalize it, in your brain you're actually thinking, food bad, I need to avoid at all costs, I need to fear this food. Sometimes when you call a food bad too much, then it turns into a fear food, and the more you try to approach this food, your heart starts to race, you start to feel anxious. When food is not meant to be good or bad, junk, clean, food is just food. I can agree that there's some differences with some food items, such as like chocolates versus salmon or broccoli, for example. It doesn't mean there's good and bad, but what we can say is less nutritious and more nutritious. For a quick example, gummy bears, which are quite high in sugar, that food quite bad, like ooh, it's high in sugar. But for someone who has type 1 diabetes, it's a life-saving food, because if they're having a hypo, low blood sugars, it could literally save their lives. They actually keep them in their pockets most of the time. It can be equal to glucose gel. People who are like powerlifters who literally work out for like 2 hours at a time or 3 hours, they can't just have nothing for 2 to 3 hours for gigantic lifts. They do have to have some sort of fuel, so they have some quick acting sugars like raisins, gummy bears, fruit juice, cranberries, stuff like that can keep them going. So there's no good, no bad, just less nutritious and more nutritious. Number 4 is to chuck the diet books away, because if you talk about the binge restrict cycle, you're binging and then you feel guilty and you want to jump onto a diet to make up for this binge, and you feel so restricted that you trigger another binge eating episode. You're in this never-ending cycle of binge restrict, binge restrict, binge restrict, and you're always trying to make up for the previous binge by undoing those calories. This mindset of ever chasing or undoing calories you've eaten in the previous binge is triggering your binge eating episodes. So to get out of the wagon, to get out of the cycle, you have to stop dieting. At least put dieting on hold, anti-diet. Tell your body that food is available, food is here regularly, it's safe. Because in our minds, of course we can see, like in our eyes, we can see the food in the cupboards, food in the fridges, but our guts can't see the food in the fridges and the cupboards. Our gut doesn't have eyes. It'll only sense when food is coming in. If there's no food coming in breakfast, or very little in the morning, it can get used to this pattern. Our hunger cues work by a pattern. They can ever quickly adapt. Our body's really good at like surviving, evolutionary. So if you're having like very little in the morning or nothing in the morning, and then you skip lunch, and then you have a gigantic binge, or you eat most of your meals in the dinner time, then our body's gonna get used to this. So you're not gonna feel hungry in the morning, not gonna feel really hungry at lunch, and then all of a sudden, do you ever get this feeling that your hunger cues literally hit you like a truck? All of the cravings hit you out of nowhere, and then you just give into it. So what I suggest practically, what you should do is just to eat the meals that you normally do, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and aim to be comfortably full, and try to avoid skipping meals. Try to be consistent. Tell your body food is coming in regularly at little amounts, and still keep the foods you love. Like if you enjoy like cookies, then maybe have it as a dessert if you're quite worried about having it as a standalone snack. Tell your body to be full and satisfied, to overcome binge eating. And point number 3, which is the final bit before we get back to the normal format where I was wearing the yellow jumper, is to regularly schedule self-care into your calendar. In this world where you're often like grinding, working 9 to 5, you should be working 5 to 9 also. It's very fast-paced, and I feel like in social media people try to portray an image where I'm grinding, I'm doing my best, and nothing can ever stop me. But behind the scenes, people are burning out, people are having mental health issues. They don't believe in like seeing a counselor because they feel that will set them back. All those little things. So it's important to regularly schedule self-care to your calendar. Self-care shouldn't be this last resort to pick you up. Let's say if you're charging your phone and it goes to 0, it's gonna take way way longer to get to maybe like 100% or even 70%. But if you're at 70%, it will charge much faster to 100%. And if you're a techie, and that's probably technically wrong, you know what I'm saying, it's harder to get back to normal levels. And if you're a tech bro and you really know a lot about phones and chargers, and I'm completely wrong, I hope you kind of get the idea that I'm trying to say, that like don't try to recover when you're at 0% or like 5%, because your function, your mood, your mental health, your physical health will deteriorate, and it's gonna be really hard to pick up. And let's say you're 0% and then having a nice shower, for example, for me, brings me up to like maybe 10%, and then I have a stressful day the day after, I'll be brought down to like 5% or maybe 0%. So keep your battery quite full, keep it close to 100% as much as possible. Even if you feel like you don't really need the self-care, then schedule self-care regularly. Still keep it in your calendar, make it a routine. Treat it as if you go to the gym, treat it as if you brush your teeth. It's essential to keep yourself topped up. So prevention is always better than a cure, especially when it comes to self-care, because when I struggle with binge eating, it's easy to fall into guilt, shame and embarrassment. You feel like you don't really deserve it, but you do deserve it. And especially when you're struggling with binge eating, it can affect you really mentally, negatively. So make sure that you're just trying to top yourself up always, or restore yourself. This is the section where I get back straight to the video in 3, 2, 1. So number 2 is to include protein into your meals and snacks. So protein is the most satiating, most filling macronutrient. So compared to carbs and fats, if you have protein into your diet, you're going to be full for longer, you're going to be satisfied, and you're going to not have like blood sugar crashes. So, or when I eat crisps, I can have probably like 3, 4, 5 bags of those little ones, or like several of those bigger bags of crisps effortlessly. So I want you to imagine if you have a small bag of crisps and maybe a protein bar or a protein yogurt, you're much less likely to have another bag of crisps because you're feeling quite full. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. The reason for this is because protein, it's really hard to break down those amino acids compared to carbs. It's easy to break down carbs and fat, but it's very difficult for your body, or at least you put your body to work essentially when it's trying to break down protein, and it stays there in your body for a really long time. So make sure you include protein into your meals and snacks. Quick examples could be tuna, protein bars, yogurt, cheese slices. Those are quick sources of protein, so you can try to implement those. And number 1, finally, is to be full and satisfied. There's a difference between being full, physically full, and satisfied. I can eat chicken, boiled chicken and rice and broccoli, which I personally don't enjoy, and I'll not be satisfied, so I'll probably head over to the crisps, cookies, and all those brownies and things. But if I have a delicious hot pot, which I personally enjoy, I love hot pots, chicken hot pots, chicken casseroles, which is nice, hearty, warm for some time with rice. So to be full and satisfied, if I'm implementing all of those measures, such as eating regular meals, making sure they're all balanced with protein, fats, carbs, and fiber, scheduling self-care regularly, including breakfast as the most important meal of the day, then I'm putting all these measures in place to tell my body there's no need to struggle with binge eating, because all these measures in place, famine going on, I'm telling my body food is coming in regularly, I'm not feeling burnt out. All of these measures in place that I implemented are the things that I implemented to stop my binge eating episodes and prevent any binge eating episodes later down the line. I haven't struggled with binge eating for like 3 or 4 years now, and even if I do overeat, then I don't really feel guilt, because self-care is part of my routine. I don't have to worry about any of it. So let me know in the comments, what is the best tip out of the 10 tips which is really helpful for you, and comment below, do you have any tips you can share with me? So I'll see you in the next video. See ya!